Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. My name is Chris Martens, and I publish Hi-Fi Plus magazine. And I'll provide a brief visual aid here. This is our magazine in digital form, and I'll be moderator for today's panel. Our topic is, what does 2017 mean for audio? And another way to flip this around would be to say, what will audio mean for you as this year unfolds? So let me begin by introducing our panel members. On the far right is Jason Serenas, who's contributing editor to Stereophile magazine. Next to me is Steve Guttenberg, who is creator of the Audiophiliac column for CNET. On my left is Conor Cawley from TechCo. And on the far left is Steve Rochlin, who's the creative director for Enjoy the Music. So I thought one way we might begin would be by asking each of the panelists to tell you what their personal areas of specialization are within the world of audio, so you sort of have some idea of who you're talking with. Jason?
My areas of specialization, well, I come to audio and as a music critic. So a lot of what I do is I write about classical music. I write for Seattle Times and Classical Voice North America, San Francisco Classical Voice, Opera Now in the UK, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So my reference always when listening to recorded music is live, unamplified, acoustic. And I like systems, and I'm drawn to systems that can do a full range orchestra and give me the same thrill that, because I'm a critic, I get in some of the best seats in the house because they give them to me, which I love. I'm kind of, you know, I'm privileged that way. So that's my reference. What I'm doing for Stereophile now is I'm finally starting to review, and I'm reviewing amplifiers and DACs. I haven't done a DAC yet, but one is on the list. So right now I am, and again, this is really painful, my work. I'm listening to D'Agostino progressions, poor me. And I just did AVM, I did AVM monoblocks and the AudioNet Maxes. There you go.
That's a lot.
Yeah, really.
Steve.
I'm getting tired thinking about all that. So I got into audio very early in my life. I had, my parents had a jukebox, and it was their jukebox, but it was my hi-fi. And I laid on the floor and let this jukebox basically take me over. It was a full body experience. But I became a movie theater projectionist, and I had movie theater size rooms to play music in as intermission music for movies, which is a really interesting experience to play music you know over a sound system in a 600-seat theater. I also spent 10 years working with David Chesky at Chesky Records, producing, I don't know how many records, but at least 30 or 40. And that gave me a really good insight about the transition from recording music to what it sounded like in the studio and what winds up on the final product. And I spent 16 years in retail, selling high-end audio in New York City at Sound by Singer and Innovative Audio. And that led to my writing career, which started 20 years ago. And I've written for almost every American audio magazine, actually everyone. And I love my work. It's a great job. And I really like turning people on to great sound and affordable components and very, very high-end components. And my Audiophiliac blog on CNET is the only, I'm bragging, but I'm sad that I'm the only one. I'm the only one in mainstream media that reaches a really wide audience of non-audiophiles and talks about high-end audio in a serious way, as opposed to, if you read an article in the New York Times about high-end audio, it's always like, here's this crazy thing, I don't even know why it exists. But I want to make the wider audience aware of high-end audio in the way that they're aware of Ferraris and all kinds of crazy, expensive things, just because they're cool. And high-end audio is very, very cool because the people that make it are passionate about it. That's not true for mainstream audio. It's not even true for, you know, most home theater stuff. Is not really, the people that make it are not passionate about it. They make a living, they have a certain level of passion to stay in business, but they don't wake up every day saying, I want to make something great. And that's what people that run high-end companies and the designers of high-end companies are all about, making great products. To you.
Steve.
No,
Conor.
All right, well, there we go. I'm the senior writer for TechCo. We're an online media and events organization that focuses on startups, entrepreneurs, and innovation. So my focus is decidedly more broad than these guys. What we focus on mostly is kind of where stuff is going, like the innovation, the Kickstarter campaigns, everything from big to small that's like going to be coming. So I think the future of audio, I think, is the most interesting to me. And I think we're going in a lot of interesting directions, and I couldn't be more excited to talk with these guys about where we're going in the next couple years.
Stephen Rochlin, creative director of EnjoyTheMusic.com. First, like to thank AXPONA for this excellent show. I've seen it grow over the years, and of course, thank you all for attending. As far as getting into music, 5 years old, Dad had Tannoy dual concentric gold monitors. I was a musician starting at 7. As far as my specialty, I was thinking about it while I listened to you guys, and I don't know if I really have one at this point. I've done everything from working with audiologists to being a sound quality judge at Car Audio, to working with recording studio guys developing, thank you, sorry, developing digital stuff to, I'm used to lapel mic.
Sound thing.
To working with great sound engineers who will move your microphone. So I don't know if I have a specialty because it includes apps, virtual reality, augmented reality, and other. I'm always thirsting for, I guess, the next audio high, if you know what I mean, if that makes sense, or if I'm just coming off weird. So I'm just really grateful to be part of this really awesome community, from musicians to these incredible guys. I feel blessed. Thank you.
And to the extent that I may jump in as a participant, let me give you a brief background. I'm publisher of Hi-Fi Plus magazine, which is printed in England, distributed all over the English-speaking world. And my areas of specialization of late have been focusing on high-performance personal audio headphones, in-ear headphones, and traditional two-channel loudspeaker-based audio with an eye toward value. But I define value in a really somewhat unorthodox way. The late, great Harry Pearson famously said, the high end isn't a price point, it's a mentality toward sound quality. So something I tend to focus on is products, whether very expensive or not, that give you huge results per unit money. So that's my area of specialization. Now, one thing I thought we might do by way of sort of seeing where audio's headed for 2017 is to take a brief look back and then see where that points us as we go forward. And I want to thank Jason for the idea for this. So one thing I'd like to do is ask each panelist, probably trying to be as concise as possible, to describe maybe 2 of your most important discoveries from the year past, and then to say where you think those discoveries lead you to think audio is headed in the year to come. Fair enough?
Oh, I have one. I have to think of the second one. Okay. You go first.
Well, it can be 1 or 2.
Okay.
Okay. So, okay, this is a trip. So my first discovery of audio was when I was 11, and my mother had designed, we had, what were they, Bozak or something? We had an early stereo. She designed a cabinet for it. And does anyone remember those old command recordings where all of a sudden the sound came from the left speaker and then it jumped to the sound of the right speaker, and you invited all your neighbors over to say, look, it's stereo. It's really, really thrilling. bongo drums here, bongo drums there. So we were doing that, but my father brought home a Caruso reissue album and put on the sextet from Lucia di Lammermoor. And I said, Daddy, I've heard that before. And he said, yeah, you broke it when you were 2. So my first audio experiences were with wind-up phonographs playing acoustic recordings, which meant that there was no such thing as a microphone, and instead there was a horn. And there are old parodies of what it was like to record a sextet, like the sextet from Lucia, where you have 6 singers, and literally the proximity to the horn is how much it'll pick up. And so you literally had people who were pulling people back and forth, pushing them around while they were singing because there was just one horn. And somehow that was an absolute thrilling experience for me. And my second really thrilling experience with audio, well, the peak experience of my life was hearing Joan Sutherland's debut in Lucia di Lammermoor at the Met when I was in high school, when time literally stood still. And what I look for in audio are those moments when time stands still. So skip that story. It actually happened in a room with VAC Electronics. Oh God, I wish I remembered which speakers they were because I never run into them. But I said, Jason, do you want to hear anything? And I put on Sarah Vaughan's recording of Send in the Clowns. And it was absolutely a holy experience. Everything was working exactly right in that room. No one coughed, no one moved, no one scratched. And when it was over, and I didn't know any of these people, there were about 30 people in the room, there was this collective sigh, and people like sat in silence as though they had just been in a holy space and witnessed a spiritual master speaking to them. And when a sound system delivers something like that for me, I mean, we all go to live performances and a lot of them are duds, but we all know the promise that can be delivered. So that's where I would go from a wind-up phonograph to that.
So where does that lead you to think audio will be headed in 2017?
Okay. I thought about what I was going to say from here. I think there are 2 exciting things. One is, and I'm not into it because I don't have a vinyl setup, and which means I may be drummed out of this room within the next 30 seconds, is the resurgence of vinyl, not only because it's tactile, not only because you get notes and bigger pictures, not only because it's fun and it's in and it's collectible and it's physical as opposed to a file, but also because it sounds good, which is a wonderful thing, especially when you realize that this is happening with younger people. And the second thing, I think, is MQA. Which is, to me, a really exciting new development that brings sound closer. And right before I got here, I spent some time with the Meridian Ultra DAC comparing files. And it was as though, and I'm talking about really wonderful recordings, still a veil had been lifted. And there was a palpability to, I was listening to choral music, recordings by John Atkinson in high res, and I had the masters and the MQA versions, and it was just extraordinary how real it felt.
Steve, what are your discoveries in?
Well, it's funny that I'm going to be saying this at an audio show, but I think one of the things that's really surprising me is our companies that are trying to reach new people who aren't audiophiles by selling expensive audio, let's call it that, not in audio stores. In New York City, and I'm sure in other parts of the country, Shinola has stores, and they have the Shinola turntable, the Runwell, and they're going to have speakers, they're going to have their own moving coil cartridge. And I went to the store in New York, and Shinola sells watches and bicycles and bags and high-end audio. It's a very strange combination. And no one in the store in New York had any clue about this turntable. I mean, they knew how to play it, but they weren't selling it like a high-end audio product. And then there's a Devalier store a few blocks away from the Shinola store, and another store that sold very expensive audio with people who worked there who knew nothing about audio. And I thought, well, that's a really interesting idea, to sell expensive audio to to people who aren't interested in high-end audio. So the sellers and the buyers are on the same plane. They're not intimidating, which is a lot of people say about high-end audio stores, is that they're intimidating. So the Shinola store and the Devalier store are definitely not intimidating, because the people that work there don't know anything about audio. It's pretty interesting. So that was, I see that as a trend, and it might go someplace. And I don't think it's cynical. I just think I didn't see that one coming. That's one. And I think this headphone that came out in 2016, and I think there'll be more things like it, the Audeze iSign in-ears, the iSign 10 and the iSign 20, soon to be joined by another one, of an in-ear headphone that's open. It's a planar magnetic headphone. It sounds so much better than any other in-ears in many ways. Ones that cost far more. The iSign 10 is $399. The iSign 20 is $599. And it's truly a revelation to hear those headphones, because there's never been anything that sounded like that before. And I'm sure they're going to be joined by others. That's it.
So, and those are your
my
trends
two.
for 2017?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Conor.
From an audio product standpoint, I think the biggest discovery for me and for every non-audiophile was the whole wireless thing. I think Apple really drew a line in the stands. I mean, obviously Bluetooth speakers and headphones have been around for X amount of years, but I think with them kind of setting the bar at that, it's like, okay, so now it's not an added feature now. It's not something you can do that's kind of fun. Wireless is something that you have to do. It's become an industry necessity at a certain point, and for 2017, I think that means that you're going to see a lot more people going that route, and I mean being forced to take that route, because people have iPhones. Lots of people have iPhones, and if you want a set of headphones that are going to work with it, you're going to have to go Bluetooth. And I think that's going to see a big improvement in Bluetooth, which would be nice, because I have perhaps the crappiest pair of Bluetooth headphones in this room. And I also have a home theater system that has wires going up and around door frames held up with tape. So I'd like to see an advancement at a more affordable price point, because I'm only 28, and this tie doesn't mean I make a lot of money.
But that is the finest of...
Oh, I know.
It is.
It's knit, if anyone was wondering.
What was the original question again? I just want to make sure I get this
I
right.
just wanted to know what were two significant discoveries you made just in the year past, and how they point forward for 2017.
Two most significant in the past year would probably be Samsung's plan with Harman and the wonderful variety of gear that we're seeing now for under $1,000, $1,500. It was kind of a zone that I don't want to say disappeared, but it's really resurging back, whether it's excellent speakers from ELAC or amplifiers or DACs that are under $1,000, even at times under $500. And MQA has the ability to be a game changer, because it's finally gives a face to better sound quality. You know, we've been stuck in this MP3 world, which was wonderful when, you know, Napster was big and bandwidth was dial-up. But we've really superseded that, just as video has gone from VHS to SVHS. And if we think just in the time of CD from '83 to now, we've had DVD, we've had Blu-ray, we're now at 4K. What has audio really done on a big commercial level? We have so much room to grow, and if MQA helps give a face to better sound quality, or what the DEG is doing with Stream the Studio, nowadays with these young kids, and my wife's daughter is 16, so I live with this, and I love it that I get around the younger generation to see what they're doing, just how they intrinsically are interacting with their music, and There was a saying, and I know I'm going to botch it exactly, but you know technology is caught on when it's really more of an afterthought. You don't even have to think about it. It's just there. And that's what I'm really hoping for in 2017 is that, you know, this great high-res audio, which is, you know, eventually going to really, you know, break out in a wonderful way in whatever way it can, MQA or whatnot. I could care less. Just we're getting into better audio, which hopefully will lead people, like Steve said. I mean, they're selling better audio as a lifestyle product, but thank God these people are actually getting better audio. I don't see the Shinola as weird because when my dad grew up, there was the Leica camera store, and in the back was kind of where you'd get your audio as well. It was a lot of DIY and stuff, but I see audio formats. Okay, it's no longer just CD. We have reel-to-reel, we have vinyl, we have CD, we have streaming in various formats. Did I mention cassette? I remember going to a store and seeing Back to the Future on cassette. I thought the irony was beautiful. Not Hollister, but one of these. There is so much going on now. What I see in 2017, perhaps more consolidation in not just the, I don't want to say arena rock, but you've got consolidation happening with a lot of the big concert venues. You've got a lot happening in the music industry, in them hiring personnel to handle the digital assets. There is a lot going on, so the potential is huge, and the money being invested into audio, music, live venues. Personally, I think it's probably at an all-time high, even if you adjust dollar value from 1970s to dollar value today. Man, this year's going to be awesome. I'm looking forward to it.
I think I'll toss out a couple here just for your consideration. One sort of matched set of discoveries for me involved some of the earphones from the Chinese firm One More. And in particular, I'm thinking of one that I just reviewed, which is the One More Quad Driver. It sells for the not too staggering sum of $199, and it just offers extraordinary value for money. And another that I haven't had a chance to review yet is Andrew Jones' latest ELAC speaker. And the trend that I think both these products illustrate is a trend toward making genuine, serious, very high-level audio excellence available to people of moderate means. And by that I even mean college students, people who just aren't made of cubic money, but do have every other impulse to enjoy the genuinely good stuff. So I think one trend we'll see in 2017 is excellence for all. Another element I've seen, and perhaps you have too if you've visited multiple audio shows, and I think you'll see it at this one, is the really widespread acceptance of streaming as a legitimate source. And it hit me at a recent show that almost, it had to be more than half the demos that I saw featured Tidal. And what that told me was that we were reaching a point where there was an intersection between convenience and quality, which, as you all know, doesn't always happen. So I find it very encouraging, and I think that will continue, and that MQA will fuel that movement as well in 2017. And then last but not least, I'm going to pick a particular exemplar, but I know it's not the only one. And in my case, it was listening to the flagship effort from YG Acoustics in the form of their Sonya XV loudspeaker. And I've got to be honest with you, for me, it was a jaw-dropping experience, because until I heard it, I don't think I knew a transducer could do what it does. There was that sense of my brain is plugged into the recording board. You know, I can read the mind of the record producer. I can absolutely hear the artist's intentions. And it just bowled me over, aided and abetted as it was by superb electronics from AudioNet, so that I've talked extensively with the editor of my magazine, Alan Sercom, and he had a very similar experience in listening to Wilson Audio's new Master Chronosonic loudspeakers. So there's that sense that even as excellence is becoming more widely available at down-to-earth everyman prices, the high end really is getting higher. It's pushing into territory we haven't been in before. And I think that's very exciting, because I think you need both poles to make the industry grow. You have to sort of push the limits of what's possible, and then you've got to push as much that is possible down to price points where a large number of people can afford to get in the game. So that's what I see for 2017. Now let me ask you this. Would you like to have an opportunity to ask questions of the panel? Can I sort of see a little show of hands if you have a question? Or I have plenty more, but I wanted to give you a chance to play. Would any of you have questions for the panel? Anybody? Well, go for it.
Well, I've been reading a lot about digital audio, and I have a little bit of a computer type setup. And if I was going to reinvest in the most up-to-date sort of things, what would you suggest to get started? Do you need a better server? Do you need a better DAC? How much do you have to buy to get like complete digital format that you use, title, other source material?
I can speak to that briefly.
Pardon?
Seems like there's a lot of
Jason wants this to talk.
different pieces of equipment. They all have DACs now. They all have this. They all have that. Are you buying 2 or 3 times what you need, or is there a simple setup?
I think the answer is to explore a lot. If that's what's in your mind, to go and listen, go to a lot of rooms and listen and see what may work for you. But one of the, it is like I have a DCS Rossini at home. So I have a choice of playing files off the computer, plugging my external hard drive into the back, or putting files on the USB stick. And my first shock was just to be stunned at how much better it sounded going right off the USB stick than going from the computer, because of all of the other stuff that the computer is doing, all the stuff that's happening in the background that's making noise, that's pulling energy. So a dedicated server is really a step in that direction. Now, I don't fully have it down, so don't quote me, but I think if you run into Rob Darling or play with Roon, one of the things that Roon is trying to do is get beyond, is it wave or is it FLAC? Is it on your computer or is it on an external hard drive? To go beyond that because of the way it works. So maybe an integration with Roon is another way to go. Those are the 2 thoughts that come into my mind succinctly.
Steve?
Me? The only thing I could tell you is think about getting better speakers or headphones. That's it.
Okay.
I would say to try to avoid going for stuff that just has a lot of features. I think a lot of places right now are trying to go in on features, and I think what a lot of the better, more quality things are doing is they're focusing on one specific one and doing that as well as possible. So try not to avoid like an all-in-one and really try to specify what you're looking for.
So, again, what are you looking to accomplish? I just want to hear back.
Well, basically that if you wanted to do MQA, you need something that decodes that.
All you need is a couple $100 DAC in your cell phone. I know these guys are going to hate hearing that, but basically,
I don't.
Your tablet or your cell phone will bring in the data you need, whether it's through Wi-Fi or 4G LTE or whatnot, and then you can get the inexpensive, I think the Audio Quest probably does it, or some other DAC for a few $100s. I haven't investigated that side. Hook that into your cell phone, then hook that into your amplified speakers or preamp or whatever amplification speakers you have, and you have it. And you're streaming the studio. You can go right to Tidal and do that. If you want to get more involved, sure, get yourself a NAS. I mean, like anything, whether it's cars or watches, how much would you like to spend? We can find ways to fill that. But odds are you probably have most of it already now. If you have a home receiver, some, even Sony receivers and some others, you can already, not maybe MQA, we're a little early on the MQA curve. But for now, your cell phone, that, and some DAC that handles MQA, and you're there if you want basics. Pricing from there on up is how much you want to spend.
One more.
Yeah, I want to follow up on that. I mean, I personally now would not buy a new DAC unless I knew that it could be, an MQA could be added to it down the line, because that's what a lot of companies have done, and it's starting to appear. I think Belcanto is doing a proof of concept thing in their room, but they're happening at all price points. It's happening in the commercial market as well. So if I were buying now, I would definitely look for that. It may not be in there now, but if they tell you that they're planning to upgrade and they can do it just with a firmware upgrade or something that's downloadable, so you don't have to send it back to the company, that would definitely be a clue for me. And the other thing is, I always liked getting up and going and turning the knob and turning the volume. But I really must say there's something really wonderful about sitting right there and being able to adjust volume inputs and everything on my iPad with my DCS. And now Audiophiliac has an app that allows you to do Audiophiliac. I hope when Amara comes out with its new thing that Amara will enable you to do that. Audiophiliac will play Tidal within, Rune will play it the same way. It's really convenient. It makes it really easy.
Oh, still going along. Well, I don't know. I think the key is going to be testing stuff, because I think there's a lot of different things. I mean, like you said, we're an entire conference for audio products right now. Like, there's going to be, I walked in the marketplace, I walked downstairs to the lower exhibits. There is enough that you could fill 50 houses with the same stuff. So I think you really got to find what is going to work for you. Right on. I mean, you got to test it out, and if you can do that without buying a bunch of stuff, that's probably ideal. But I think that's really the key: is doing everything you can for you, because you only know what your ears are listening to. Yep, good point.
Did that catch the sense of your question?
Well, yeah, I mean, it let me know that I feel like you're right. I probably have 90% of what I need, and I don't need 60 pieces to do a digital audio, right? But I might want to upgrade to a DAC that has that MQA feature. Get ready for the next leg.
And something that's streaming capable at the same time, so that you can play Tidal through it, so you can play these other services, because it's not just Tidal that's playing high res. And Mark Feiner, I saw you, yes. Mark, Spotify is doing it now, am I correct? What are all the services that are doing high res streaming?
A number of services have announced the potential to do this. They have specific rollout plans. Spotify is testing CD quality or higher music. They haven't been that specific. But it's all in the works.
So you're thinking a music streamer as well as DAC?
Yeah, or a combination. Yeah, it depends on your budget.
Yeah, like Steve said, if you want to spend $10,000 to get that last 10%, go to town.
Oh, I have one other thing to say about MQA. Chesky Records has just brought out their first MQA CD. So what's really interesting about it is that it's a high-res CD. It's something that, was talked about a lot a long time ago. How could you get high-res on a CD? So with MQA, now there's high-res 192, and I think he'll have 352 CDs very soon. So, and I tried it. I was using a Brooklyn DAC, and you just pop it in. You don't have to do anything. There it is, high-res, coming off of a CD, and it's just a regular CD that'll play in any CD player. And I'm sure other companies will do that as well.
One thing I'll toss out, in perhaps the stunning grasp of the obvious department, but you'd be surprised how many people miss this, is in choosing any upgrade equipment. I would just assert listen, 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 and then listen some more. And the reason I say this is that I find a lot of times people sort of devolve down to making purchase decisions via the checklist method, and then they get the new Whiz-Bang 9000 home and they plug it in, and there's this, there's no magic happening here. What went wrong? And what went wrong was nobody listened to it before they selected the Whiz-Bang 9000. So that I find very often not so obvious choices turn out to be the best sounding ones. So I just would assert there is no substitute for listening to something before you acquire it. Because sometimes what you think's gonna happen isn't actually what happens. But your ears will never play you false. Do we have other questions from the floor? Okay, go. And we'll ask you to speak up as loudly as possible because we have microphones, but you don't.
What are your thoughts on a switch from, we're going to have either the USB-C connectors in cell phones? How will this impact manufacturers of headphones? If it will have any impact, how will this impact audio quality? What are your thoughts?
Well, Audeze has made, headphones with lightning connectors. I know that Noble just did one, and they'll be doing it with USB connectors as well. Oh, sorry. So anyway, so that way the DAC is basically in the cable and not in the phone anymore. So the potential for much better sound from phones is right there, in the cable, so to speak.
I think the connector is not good nor bad as long as we have a standardization. I mean, Apple can have their connector, and Android and the rest can have their USB connector. And as long as we have that, if you build it, they will come. If you give, the one thing that's irked me with the headphone industry is there's so many different connectors for in-ears and this and that. It's gotten confusing, for me at least, because I have my wife will even tell you, I literally have shelves of connectors and cables for every different solution needed. Am I the only one that's got boxes full? And wouldn't we like to get it down to maybe like 2, 3? So I see it as a good thing. The other thing is keep in mind that with the new Bluetooth that's coming out, it is capable of much more bandwidth than we have now, which peaks out with aptX, whatever. So the whole cable thing could be moot. Because frankly, wireless is neither good nor bad. It simply is. It's how you implement it. I mean, how many of us watch, through like 4K video through their wireless home system? Am I the only one that does 4K video through wireless? There's plenty of bandwidth. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I bow to you. High-res audio is nothing compared to 4K video when you're talking about bandwidth. And I've been doing a lot of video stuff. We're kids play at 24/192 compared to the bandwidth needed for 4K video and the supporting Dolby Digital or whatever array of surround sound audio choices you have.
I think that's the key. Is that it is going to become moot eventually because everything, every startup I write about that's in the audio industry is all going wireless because everyone knows that it's on the way. Apple's not going to be the only one getting rid of the headphone jack. Everyone's going to be doing it, and it's just going to become the norm. So it's whoever can come up with the best way to handle that.
I think we're good.
We're good? All right.
I think we're good.
I will toss one thing out. And this might make me the curmudgeon of the group. The minute I saw Apple make that choice, I just sort of went, it's like the beginning of iTunes when Apple told us, oh, MP3 is as good as sound quality we'll ever get. And I was kind of sitting there going, man, you guys are developing Pinocchio noses. So that the minute I saw they got rid of the headphone jack, I thought, Apple does it again. Let's be at war with sound quality. With that said, I've run across a product recently that I think opens up a really refreshing way of thinking about the Apple choice, which is from a little company called Blue Wave. and their product is called the Get, and it's a roughly lipstick case-sized Bluetooth receiver headphone amplifier. And so the mentality is, hey, let's face it, most guys building earphones who actually know how to build earphones really aren't great at Bluetooth, and they probably aren't great at headphone amplifiers either. With a device like this, you can turn any earphone or headphone within limits into a Bluetooth headphone, and you don't have to be constrained by guys who are making highly compromised engineering choices that they probably didn't fully understand because they were being forced to work in areas they didn't really have expertise. But the good news too is that for now, at least, we've still got the lightning connector, so you can get lightning signal cables and still have connectivity. The reason I took the tack that I did is that I generally haven't found Bluetooth to actually sound as good as wired connections. And so I always hate getting squeezed into a place where you're forced into a convenience or sound quality decision. I have always wanted
The way I
both.
put it is more money for worse sound. It's a great concept. I mean, it is more convenient, but it doesn't sound as good as a wire. Sorry to disagree with you guys over there, but wireless is great for convenience, and in terms of headphones, as I've heard them, not so good for sound. I just reviewed the Sony MDR-1000X. It's the first Bluetooth headphone I reviewed, and it's a nice headphone. It's $400. It's a great thing. But cheaper Bluetooth headphones and Bose Bluetooth headphones, to pick on one, they don't really sound that good. Bluetooth is a big, booming market in headphones. There's no doubt about it. But in terms of sound quality per dollar, a wired headphone will win every single time.
Yeah,
with no exception.
I was in no way disagreeing with that. I think that's obviously the case. I think that it's inevitable at this point. Once Apple kind of makes the decision, like you said with iTunes, like it's just kind of the way we're heading. So I think companies are doing their best and focusing on making Bluetooth catch up. But unfortunately, the audio industry has to catch up to the technology industry, and that's just kind of how it is.
Right, I agree. In current implementation, Bluetooth has limits. The next implementation of Bluetooth, I think we're going to see some of that disappear because the bandwidth is there. So I do agree. Current implementation has limitations.
A question up in the back.
Yeah.
And really belt it out.
Okay, future of surround audio. We hear it all around us, not just from the front. And then the room is the other half of the audio. Any developments there?
Let me ask you a question. I've been. If you're talking about surround sound without a picture, surround sound audio as opposed to a movie surround, is that what you mean?
Yes.
So, I've been, thinking about and writing about surround sound for music for a long time, and the problem was a long time ago in 1999 and 2000 when DVD audio and SACD came out. There wasn't an aesthetic that formed around mixing music for surround. With movies, absolutely positively, but music without a picture to sort of anchor what's going on, it just doesn't fly. It's not going to happen because people need the visual to understand what it is. So people keep talking about it, but it doesn't seem to happen because you actually have to really be in the real sweet spot from 5 speakers or whatever to get it to work at all. And I kept hearing it was going to happen. I'll give you one exception, though, is Steven Wilson from Porcupine Tree. His records and his solo records, he seems to get how to mix music in surround that works. But it's really a niche within a niche. I don't see a future for that. Sorry.
Yeah, he brings up a great point is keep in mind we're humans, and as we grow, in a sense, we're learning machines. And what we've learned is when we're hearing sound around us, we really anchor to the visual cue. So just having like quadraphonic way back or the DVD audio, while it's neat, you're right in that without having an anchor. Roger Waters' engineer, and I feel horrible because we just published an interview with him by republished from Mike Metler, who, if you ever heard Roger Waters amused to death, it is so convincing from, if you have a well set up room and 2 speakers and surround, I'm sure it's also glorious. But, you know, to anchor it, I think this is where perhaps something like virtual or augmented reality, although for right now it's mainly headphone based, but has a way of, but again, that's where you're 100% right, the visuals. Just having audio and surround, will a normal human really latch on to that big time? Like you said, niche in a niche.
It doesn't happen. I mean,
yeah.
if you count quadraphonic,
there
it goes
may be
back
fans,
to the 70s.
but it's not.
It's 40 years of it not happening, and people launch it, and it sort of drifts around a little bit, but it doesn't catch on.
Yeah.
And I don't think it ever will.
I think if we were going to go for something more consumer friendly or something like that, I think we've been talking about Bluetooth this whole time. I think what's really going to happen and is really going to take off is that Wi-Fi enabled speakers is going to become popular because voice activated assistants like Google Home, Amazon Alexa, they're becoming a standard. People are starting to love those, and if you can't, I have one of the most popular things I use it for is music, but I have an old school speaker system, so I can't have it play through that, and I have to have it play just through the single box. And I think you're going to see a big push past Bluetooth to get Wi-Fi stuff for that specific reason, and I think that's how you'd get a more popular consumer base, but I still think there's going to be a lot of quality stuff around that, unfortunately.
Now, is your speaker system a surround system, or?
Yes. Oh no, I'm not kidding. I have wires up taped around door frames so that they can be in the right spots for the right thing, and it still sounds great compared to just having a Google Home in the middle of my living room.
So, Jason, thoughts on surround?
Well, I'm thinking about those wires over doors, and I will never forget, and this is like with blessings to Meredith of Nordost. My husband walking into our house in East Oakland, and he walks in the front door and he goes, "Cables!" I literally did this. We have been together now 15 years. He will not sit in the sweet spot. I mean, it's just like, so I guess I have a music room. There's not enough room for 5 speakers, but I guess I could actually do all the wires and do all of that. But what I prefer to do is, in terms for an immersive experience, is I think about some companies, quote unquote, tweaks, things from Synergistic Research, from Jack Bybee, from Holger Stein and Stein Music. I've got them all in my system. I don't have them anymore, but the old Shakti holographs. These things actually do things. They help you break down that feeling of I'm here and the music is there and I'm facing it, and you know, never the twain shall meet, and instead bring you more into the experience. So that's one thought I have for people who don't want to go that route. That's all I wanted to say.
I do think Steve was on to a good point, though, that it isn't that surround doesn't have tremendous possibilities. It's that there never seemed to be a culture of competition to get really good at recording and mastering for it. And it may be, it just dawned on me, it may be that if VR really takes off, as I think,
you would have a better idea than
I mean, yeah, it's got a chance. I mean, that would definitely be sound. If you've ever tried a virtual reality headset, it's not nearly as interesting if you're in a crowded room than when you're by yourself with a pair of good headphones on with it, because that really takes it to a whole other level. So that could be the surround sound thing, but I mean, VR's still got a ways to go.
I mean, in a way, VR could be the prime mover that says, oh, okay, now we really finally should actually learn how to do music and movies and all kinds of other content with surround sound. But I think that has to lead us into the technology, because otherwise you've got technology all dressed up with no place to go, musically speaking. Now,
and I'm
sorry.
No, go ahead. No,
If I can ask a question, how many people have tried what I would consider at least a relatively high quality virtual or augmented? I know augmented reality, we're still kind of, but how many people here have at least like a Samsung phone that they threw in the stupid goggles and tried it? Video gamers that, because video games also have a lot of surround content. I know this is the wrong audience for that, but. Okay, for those who raise their hands, okay, do you find when you move your head and listening to music or whatever it is, how do you find the experience? Is it good for you, or do you get the motion sickness, or?
It's okay. I mean, I've never done any music intensive. Well, the one I did was a 35-week where you're on stage.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember any variation in the sound that I built.
Okay. Anyone else? Just curious. I like boots on the I like to. Thank you.
Now,
Sorry.
let me catch the other half of your question, though. Room acoustics. What say you on that subject? He had asked about room acoustics and ways to
Oh,
address
well-
them, since room acoustics are, so much a part of the music listening equation.
In my opinion, the most important thing is your room and how the loudspeakers integrate with it. I think that will make the largest difference. Now, there are some visually attractive acoustic panels now, unlike the days when we would go and get the old milk crate foam, not foam, but the cardboards. I don't know how many people ever did that or something like that. It's key. I mean, if you don't have a great loudspeaker room, you can have a great system and it might come out, but I think the best is... Now, as far as how to do your room acoustics, every room's unique, every house is unique. Do you have a floating floor? Do you have cinder block walls? Do you have... Man, get an acoustician, and if you're not sure what you're doing, there's plenty of books out there. Or, of course, just hire if you're really serious, like the guys in Thailand. They had, not Thailand, I'm sorry, Kuala Lumpur, which my wife came. Some of these guys hired actual acousticians, came in, and they had purpose-built rooms. And if they can do this way out in Kuala Lumpur, which actually is not really interesting. In America, we've got a few guys, pony up a few bucks, get a good sounding room, if you're into sound with loudspeakers.
I have a very straightforward solution. Consider headphones. Because most rooms in houses that I've been in, and my own apartment sometimes, aren't really good for music, or aren't good for sound. The simplest and most direct and almost free solution is to get closer to the speakers. The closer you are to the speakers, the more direct sound you'll hear and the less reflected sound you'll hear. And that is the easiest and free way to improve the sound of any speaker in a room. But I really think that experimenting with speaker placement, which wall the speaker is going to be on, which room it is if you have a choice, that can actually make a huge difference. And I differ with Steve Rochlin's idea, because even in professionally built theaters have terrible acoustics, and acousticians design them or had input in them, and they're not great. So having an average person try to solve acoustic problems, if you have hardwood floors and mirrors and big windows, your room's not going to sound good. And then headphones are definitely the answer. But if you just have an average room, getting closer and experimenting with the different walls in your room, how close you are, how close the speakers are to each other, toe in, putting a rug on the floor, that sort of stuff, that gets you, to use an expression, 90% of what you can get in that room for almost free.
Jason?
Yeah, well, I'm just shaking my head at what Steve's saying, because I've gone both routes. Bart Andier has helped me from Resolution Acoustics and designed stuff for the room that was not incredibly expensive. I have to, what's good value? That it's dangerous to go that route. So that helped a lot. And when Steve just said the thing about the rug and me moving the rug 1/4 of an inch. But I just hosted the Pacific Northwest Audiophiliac Society. I hosted 20 people over my house, and we did an amp comparison, and I invited people over. And then one person commented, looking at the photo, and said, "I would have moved those Wilsons farther out from the wall." Ahem. Do you know how many people worked to get those Wilsons in exactly the position they are? There was someone else who wanted me to put his tweaks in the room and said, "Well, you'll have plenty of room if you just move those Wilsons over." Those Wilsons are in exactly the right spot for that room. It has been measured. Everything, the entire range has been looked at. 1/4 of an inch makes a difference. It's frightening, it's astounding, it's frustrating, and it takes time. But when you find the right place, it's quite amazing. So don't give up on the room just yet. First, don't do it. And I have been at audio shows. I remember in one room, music lovers had set up for the California Audio Show. and the whole back was glass. I mean, it was just awful, and the sound was great. John Iverson has a Martin Logan setup where he reviews stuff in San Luis Obispo, and it's, you know, he has these wonderful view of the radioactive hills, and with the reactor there, in case anyone doesn't know the reference, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And he keeps those windows open, and he has found a way to solve it. So the placement's very important, and then the treatment, and doing it judiciously rather than just throwing it all in there because it's in a package. And some of it actually, there are even people who you can work with programs and help you from a distance and figure out what you need.
By the way, just as one very small pragmatic tip, which I came by the hard way, for speaker placement in your room, do not place the speaker so that it's beneath or directly in front of the one and only access portal to your home's HVAC system. Because what will happen if you have a spouse is that you will be out of the house and you will return, and the HVAC people will be there servicing your AC unit, and your speaker, which you measured with micrometer precision, is now out in the front hall. And this will lead you to want to kill the HVAC person or have really harsh words with your spouse, and you shouldn't do either of those things. Find a different location. I've been through this a lot of times. Now, we're nearly out of time, so one thing I thought I would do, just to tie things off here, is to say to our panel, if we get together and do this again next year, I'd like to ask you to project right now what we will have learned from 2017. And each person's got about, 30 seconds.
I will have learned in the next year how far resolution, acceptance of high resolution has gone, how far MQA has gone, and I will discover if in fact people change. I tend not to listen on headphones, but if people have changed their minds about Bluetooth because we've reached the next level of Bluetooth and we can have a different dialogue on that. Those are three things that interest me.
Steve, what will we know then that we don't know now?
I'm not sure. I don't really know what I'm going to know.
But you're good at guessing.
I think that the two-channel audio world will start to embrace headphones in a more serious way, because they are the future, speaking of the future. And one of the best things about headphones is there's no room to contend with, and you're hearing basically what the microphones heard minus your room adding its own sound. And more people will be aware of that.
Conor.
Next year, we will know if someone has figured out a way to make completely wireless Bluetooth headphones that you can't lose. Because I think that is the biggest problem right now. The AirPods, everything like that. I want something completely wireless I can just put in my ear, and I want a way for it not to fall down the drain. That's all I want. That's all I want. Well, hired. I know, but that's a problem. We're going wireless. There needs to be a way.
Next year, I think we're going to learn how many more online services do at least CD or better streaming. And at the same time, I think we're really going to mature in just that people obviously want better sound than MP3. It could be, again, vinyl. It could be. And the other front is I'm still waiting for the higher resolution vinyl, which is, I think, still under concept. But there is a new way of actually making metal mothers, which is really going to be a blessing. How many people have toured a pressing plant or seen how kind of prehistoric a record is still made, in a sense, the old scratching? And man, there's some new technology going on there. Not just the pressing machines that Jack Black, but there's no, not just the pressing machines. I'm talking actually making the metal mothers. There's some cool stuff going on in that regard that's going to make life a lot easier. So we can just get out these mothers. As in metal mothers, not. I quickly realized what I just said. Man, I'm telling you, I am so loving this whole 3D printing, laser etching, precision. numeric machines that even my dad was like, oh, I'm a geek, I'm sorry. It just gets me, well, happy. Sorry.
Well, our time is up. Thank you very, very much for coming. And I think many of us are going to be around here afterwards if you have any other questions for us. Thank you.
Thank you.